Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thanks again for stopping by. I do appreciate it. I look forward to hosting Dennis McCrory, who's the CEO of OnFon Media, at Mindspeak a week on Saturday. Dennis is a very interesting fellow, and he's got a great story to tell. He's got a fabulous business which has been built at the sort of frontier, the IT element of our economy, and he's going to have a lot to tell us. Mindspeak, of course, is held at the Intercontinental. We've hosted this year Christine Lagarde of the IMF, Dr. Titus Naikuni of Kenya Airways, Charles Ireland of EABL, the East African Community's Secretary General, Dr. Sasibera Munir Ahmed, National Bank, and Joshua Oigara of KCB. And I'll also put up a link for the Lagarde Mindspeak session, which was tremendous. My home thoughts, I don't know, I think I need a break or something, and one of my favourite places is Lake Magadi, and I'll put up a photograph Mishra took of me walking on what's called the South Beach. It's totally deserted, and the last time, unfortunately, we went there, we felt quite uncomfortable because it's so remote, so deserted, and we got approached by two sort of ne'er-do-wells on scooters, which didn't make us feel very good. And I'll put up a photograph of the hot springs at Lake Magadi. It's boiling hot, meant to be. The Maasai man told me it fixes anything, and it's sort of an alkaline texture you have on your skin. And I did feel a lot better afterwards, I must admit, though it is very hot. And then earlier today I had to go to the girls' school and see the headmaster. It's some way down the Thika superhighway, and I took a photograph near EABL as we crossed over. And it really is extraordinary, the economy that's built up across and around that road. Political reflections, I'm not going to dwell on it, but clearly Ferguson is catching a lot of people's attention. I'll put up a photograph that the AP took National Guard troops called in as Ferguson violence escalates. I've always enjoyed reading Pankaj Mishra, and he's written an interesting piece, Eurasia's Reagan Revolutions, he calls it. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's Prime Minister, brutally cracked down on protesters in Istanbul's Gezi Park last year, banned Facebook and YouTube, faced serious allegations of corruption, and more recently was caught on camera slapping a demonstrator. None of this mattered last week, as a majority of Turks made him the country's first popularly elected president. A range of 19th century thinkers from Alexis de Tocqueville to Jacob Burckhardt warned against putting rabble-rousers exalted by popular vote into power. The Turkish Teflon leader's electoral triumph is only the latest instance of degraded democracy. An indifference to civil rights and aggressive Hindu majoritarianism did not prevent, and probably helped, certainly helped, Narendra Modi's ascent to India's highest political office this spring. Putin has enjoyed higher approval ratings this year after annexing Crimea and threatening eastern Ukraine. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban has been impressed enough to declare that the new wind blowing from the east has swept away the tottering facade of liberal democracy. In an extraordinary turnaround, Orban, leader of a European Union member state, hopes to emulate the mini Caesars of the East as they gratify a widely felt craving among their peoples for fresh energy and vigour after a period of stagnation. Very interesting piece. And just saying that, Modi boasts about his 56-inch chest, Putin's judo moves, and Erdogan's tendency to get physical, all aimed to pull off Reagan's confidence trick. Modi has revived the fantasy of an Indian century after economic setbacks and political dysfunction had punctured it. Erdogan promised Turks an economically vibrant and internationally prominent nation after a long period of isolation, chaos and unrepresentative regimes. Putin too found his constituency among a humiliated and fearful people, Russia suffered a much bigger economic crisis and loss of political legitimacy in the 1990s than the US had in the 1970s. All three leaders possess ideological bases like the one Reagan had among Christian fundamentalists and neoconservative intellectuals. Turkey's neo-Ottomanists, Russia's Eurasianists, and India's Hindu millenarians assert their geopolitical ambition as boldly as the Reaganites did. Excellent point, isn't it? Really going to that sort of very conservative base, which often delivers the votes in point of fact. And extremely interesting piece. And he concludes by saying, the information revolution since then has hardly made for a more pragmatic attachment to self-interest. In our century, elected demagogues can still seduce men into the large-scale delusions and occasionally crimes of passion. I saw this tweet from Aris Rusinos of IS positions burning near Mosul Dam, constant Pesh mortar fire, just one IS mortar in response, 2 jets circling overhead. And clearly there's been a more offensive position taken. What's interesting, I think, are the movements in the geopolitical chessboard. David Cameron's comments in the Telegraph, which were then amplified, which contained an outreach to Iran, recent reports that people are looking very seriously at the gas pipeline out of Iran as a counterweight to Russia. So we have interesting developments happening, but in a context of a much more uncertain, diffuse, higher beta world that we live in, where you feel that anything could tip things over the edge. Coming to the currency markets, Euro 133.57, dollar index 81.61, Japanese yen 102.60, Swissy 0.9069, pound a little bit firmer 167.22, but I saw before I started this podcast that inflation undershot expectations. Aussie 0.9339, India rupee 60.76, South Korean won 10.1750, the Real 225.83, Egyptian pound 7.1506, and the South African rand 10.6189. I'll put up a chart of the dollar index. It's a 1 month chart, in fact, and I think it's going to continue strengthening actually, and I suspect, you know, corrections will be shallow. Euro dollar 133.57. Key issue is Bund yields now at 101%, which is supporting a big rally in peripheral bond yields, for example. Very interesting article in Bloomberg, pricier lamb and China's increasing thirst for milk signal New Zealand's dollar may halt the decline since July that turned the world's best performing major currency into the worst. And this chart that I'm going to put up shows the Kiwis retreat from within 1 cent of a record versus the US dollar last month as a glut of milk supply drove down dairy prices, while a seasonal lull impacted livestock. The lower panel on this graph shows China's consumption of whole milk powder, New Zealand's biggest export, now exceeds half the world's total. While a shift by farmers to dairy production has reduced the national sheep flock to a 70-year low, and basically painting a strong case for a rebound in the currency. Then I read a piece about Monaco real estate, a 3,300 square meter, which is 35,500 square foot penthouse with a water slide connecting a dance floor to a circular open-air swimming pool. It's for sale for about $400 million in Monaco. Interesting, then this was basically saying this is called the Tour Odeon, the double skyscraper being built by Group Marzocco SAM, and that's where that penthouse is going to be. But what I learned is a flow of new residents is emigrating from Switzerland, where financial secrecy laws are crumbling. The Swiss government signed an accord in May to automatically share bank data across borders. And essentially, high net worth individuals want to be in this part of the world. This is probably the last refuge. and asking prices for luxury homes in Geneva have fallen by an average of about 30% in the past 12 months, and values have dropped by as much as 6%, according to Knight Frank. That's interesting, isn't it, how regulatory changes affect real estate markets. Moving on, gold just back below 1,300 at 1299.33. It's been there a long time. Crude oil $94.07. Emerging markets, Governor Lee Ju-yeol and his board lowered the 7-day repurchase rate to 2.25% from 2.5% in South Korea. I'll put up a photograph of him hitting the gavel to start an NPC meeting at headquarters in Seoul, and a one-year chart of the South Korean won, which has been remarkably resilient, and it's not difficult to know why the economy is doing well. Dubai and South Korea have signed a joint investments deal. This is according to the FT. Dubai has broadened its horizons to become a base for companies, especially those from Asia, seeking to access fast-growing African markets. Dubai has the connectivity and Korea has the technology, said Mohammed Al-Shaibani, ICD's chief executive. That is a great synergy. I'll put up a photograph of the Burj Khalifa I took 122 days ago, and another photograph of Dubai seen from the sky 178 days ago. And in February, when I took that photograph of Dubai from the sky, I wrote, as I sat, because I had to spend about 12 hours in that airport, and as I listened, you could practically fly to any destination you care to mention in the world. And I concluded an article which I was writing saying that Dubai is the real transit state, a connection point in an interconnected century. Then yesterday someone tweeted me about Ebola, and saying that 83% of African air travel is done on Middle Eastern airlines. And therefore that makes Dubai, Doha, very risky places, I would have thought, with respect to Ebola. Dubai, I read a report where authors characterized a key trait of 21st century, particularly metropolitan success, as being a quality termed global fluency. And global fluency is the level of global understanding, competence, practice, and reach a metropolitan area exhibits in an increasingly interconnected world economy. And I was saying both Dubai and Geneva are globally fluent. Sky News tweeted that the World Health Organization says the number of Ebola cases in West Africa has risen to 2,240, including 1,229 deaths. When I wrote my piece over the weekend, the Ebola virus is non-linear and economic forecasting is now high beta, I started by I said that viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics, and that on Friday it was 1,145, who also said on that Friday that staff at the Ebola outbreak site see evidence that the number of reported cases and deaths vastly underestimate the magnitude of the outbreak. And I said that is surely a given. The World Bank has written treatises on data gathering in sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore I err on the side of a massive undercount in the matter of Ebola. According to the Nobel Prize-winning biologist Joshua Lederberg, the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on this planet is the virus. Ahmed Malik, an evolutionary geneticist, has said that we have been in an evolutionary arms race with viruses for at least 100 million years. Conspiracy theorists, and there are plenty on social media, refer us back to Fort Detrick, which was the center of US government chemical biological warfare research. Incredibly, the next piece, in early 1952, the CIA effected an agreement with the Army Chemical Corporation for the performance of certain research and development work by the Army Chemical Corporation at the laboratory facilities of Special Operations Division, Army Biological Laboratories, Frederick, Maryland. This quote, which I put in my article, which funnily I've got edited out, I think is crucial. And here is a key quote about a research project: adaptation and testing of a non-discernible microbiological device for clandestine inoculation with BWCW biowarfare, chemical warfare agents, to determine compatibility with various materials, to assure that the microbioinoculator cannot be identified structurally or easily detected upon a detailed autopsy. And I thought that was relevant, the conspiracy theorists. African Ebola, of course, is one of the deadliest of known human viruses. It kills by clotting the blood of its victims, shutting off the flow of nutrients to key parts of the body, and chewing through connective tissue so that the infected literally cough their guts out. And I concluded by saying, economic forecasting across vast swathes of sub-Saharan Africa now carries a very high component of beta, uncertainty, and volatility. Ebola drains budgets as bills fund virus fight. This is in Bloomberg. The worst ever Ebola outbreak is straining the finances of affected governments, with Sierra Leone using treasury bills to fight against the virus as mining companies halt operations to protect workers. Emergency aid of as much as $260 million is being prepared by the World Bank and the African Development Bank to limit the economic fallout of the virus on Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia. In the latest outbreak, this was when they were writing 1,145 people had died, 60% infected with the disease. Governments are almost totally reliant on international aid and healthcare expertise to coordinate and fund the containment strategy. The selling of debt remains a poor option for impoverished West African countries seeking to fund the fight. Sierra Leone auctioned 87.1 billion leones, $20 million of T-bills, with a 364-day debt selling at 6.64%, up from 6.27% at the July 24 sale, saying the proceeds are being used to battle Ebola. Liberia issued 144.6 million Liberian dollars, $1.8 million of 91-day notes, 3.9% last month, up from 2.2% at a debut sale. And Guinea sold 100 billion francs of 364-day bills at an average 10.8%, up from 9.39% at an auction the previous week. Business and transport disruptions we all know about. British Airways halted flights to Liberia and Sierra Leone. Kenya Airways will stop flying, while Emirates cancel services to Conakry and Guinea. These are a small combined economy. Three countries have a combined GDP of about $13 billion, smaller than Afghanistan's $21 billion economy, by the way. The outbreak is the worst since the virus was first identified in the DRC in 1976, has spread to Nigeria, where 4 people have died from the illness. The disease is treated by keeping patients hydrated, replacing lost blood, and using antibiotics to fight opportunistic infections. Nigeria has managed to contain the disease. The consequences for the West African oil and gas industry would be considerable if it was to spread further, said Moody's. Nigeria's $500 billion economy is Africa's largest, biggest oil producer, 170 million people, its most populated country. So clearly we're in a very volatile period, and I think I err on the side that we haven't hit that parabolic move that we normally have in viruses or epidemics. I think it's being miscounted, and I think we live in such an interconnected world now that it's any small our defenses are very, very weak. I watched an incredible documentary about Ebola done by Vice. The link is on the website. It's on YouTube. It's called Monkey Meat and the Ebola Outbreak in Liberia. And once you watch that, you'd wonder why this thing hasn't spread all over the world. Rule of law in Africa better than you think, says Muhammad Ibrahim. In my own business, I sued 3 African governments and the local courts, and I won every case. I challenge any businessman here to sue China in a Chinese court, he told an audience of business people at the US-Africa Leaders Summit. If you want to succeed in the long term, you have to do clean business. Otherwise, it comes and bites you in the backside, so please behave. Pew Research put out a report saying Africans express particularly positive views about America. Strong majorities in all 7 nations surveyed backed the United States. 3/4 or more of Kenyans, 80%, Ghanaians 77%, Tanzanians 75%, and Senegalese 74%. And there is clear evidence of US and Barack Obama's soft power, which I think he's trying to encourage a little bit since this big summit. Remittances via money transfers in sub-Saharan Africa will grow exponentially to more than $100 billion by 2017, says Visa. That's interesting, and I'm still looking for that original report. And according to UNCTAD, Review of Maritime Transport, this is interesting, 3 countries registered the highest growth in container throughput in 2012. Were all in Africa. Congo 44.6%, Ghana 30%, Kenya 22.7%. Although Africa has a long history with seafaring, even longer than much of the developed world today, especially across the Indian Ocean to the Far East, today the continent's 90 or so ports handle about just 6% of global traffic. Only 6 ports, 3 in Egypt, 3 in South Africa, handle over 50% of the whole continent's container traffic. Though not often commented on, that translates into a lot of silent clout for the 2 countries. According to one estimate, half of the world's container traffic is shipped across the Indian Ocean. So a good chunk of this is hovering around the African continent at one point or another. The traffic is increasingly coming from Africa itself, according to the latest UNCTAD Review of Maritime Transport. As I mentioned, the 3 countries registering the highest growth in container throughput in 2012 were all in Africa. According to the African Development Bank, port throughput in Africa will rise from 265 million tonnes in 2009 to more than 2 billion tonnes in 2040. Transport volumes will increase 6 to 8-fold, with a particularly strong increase of up to 14 times for some landlocked countries. South African oil share ticked 0.61% higher. It's up 11.4925% this year, 51,572. The bulls will want to see it above 52,000. Dollar rand, 1061.67. I'll put up a 1-month chart. Sort of mid-range. Egyptian pound, where it's been for eternity, 7.15. Egyptian stock market, first losing day in quite a while, retreated 1.35%, remains plus 37.363% to the good this year, multi-year highs and above 9,300. The Nigerian oil share is up a measly 0.09% now as it slipped back. Ghana Stock Exchange ticked higher yesterday, 0.23%. It's up 3.543%, but they've been caned on the foreign exchange. Peter Nordstrom has tweeted, escaping the Nairobi cold, and it is, and it was the first day I wore my overcoat, which I once bought in New York at Saks Fifth Avenue when I was visiting, and it was a big extravagance. And I've only been able to wear it 1 or 2 weeks of the year in Nairobi, but today is one of them, so I'm rather enjoying myself. Hannah said to me, "What are you wearing?" She couldn't believe it. She thought I'd become a doctor or something. But anyway, Peter Nordstrom tweets that he's escaped the Nairobi cold for 3 working days in Hargeisa. More camels on the streets than last time. I'll put up that photograph of Hargeisa, the city lodges to expand in East Africa. And this is what I found interesting. Mr. Lotta said City Lodge's Kenyan hotels generated far higher profits per room compared with its South African hotels. Do have a look at that if you want. ShopRite full-year profit missed analyst estimates, but what I found interesting, revenue from South African supermarket operations grew 8.7%. Revenue from outside South Africa increased by 27%. That's pretty much the trend you're seeing across South African businesses, and why they're getting a lot more aggressive about delving deeper into the sub-Saharan African hinterland. Human Rights Watch have put out a very hard-hitting report, Kenya Killings, Disappearances by Anti-Terror Police. There is strong evidence that Kenya's anti-terrorism police unit has carried out a series of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. Human Rights Watch also found evidence of arbitrary arrests and mistreatment of terrorism suspects in detention. Kenyan authorities should urgently investigate alleged killings, disappearances and other abuses by the unit and hold those responsible to account. International donors should suspend support to the unit and other security forces responsible for human rights violations. Kenyan counter-terrorism forces appear to be killing and disappearing people right under the noses of top government officials, major embassies in the United Nations, said Leslie Lefkow, Deputy Africa Director. This horrendous conduct does not protect Kenyans from terrorism. It simply undermines the rule of law. In research conducted in Kenya between November 2013 and June 2014, Human Rights Watch documented at least 10 cases of killings, 10 cases of enforced disappearances, and 11 cases of mistreatment or harassment of terrorism suspects, in which there is strong evidence of the counter-terrorism unit's involvement, mainly in Nairobi since 2011. Very hard-hitting report, well worth looking at. And I, for one, think, that they are responsible, I'm afraid, and they would do well to approach this in a different manner. This is lighting the tinderbox. Far better arresting people, pulling them up in court, keeping them under surveillance, than just shooting them dead and then leaving their body out in the middle of the street, which my dad once described. For 3 days outside the police station, they left the bodies of these priests who was assassinated, Magadi or one of the other ones. The unit receives funding from the US and Britain. Human Rights Watch added, with Washington providing $19 million. And I think the problem happened because somebody told me, an ambassador told me that they'd shared some information. Next thing they know, the guy was dead. And they didn't feel very good about that. Limuru Tea reports first half profit before tax down 42.55%. In the first half of 2014, produced 1,649,380 kilograms of green leaf, manufactured into 378.28 tons of black tea, 9% increase in made tea volumes. First half revenues down 18%. Tea prices were soft in this reporting period, but the market cap is less than $10 million. And Limuru Tea is now real prime real estate if you just care to look at the map of Nairobi. And I've just met somebody who bought 50 acres miles down the Thika highway at $100,000 per acre. So just go and do your maths, because this Limuru Tea land is worth 3 times that per acre. KWFT to sell 25% stake to European funds. Joshua tweeted me this morning from New York. Breathtaking day in New York with investors. Non-linearity. They took a great photograph. Kenya shilling is ticked through that key resistance area, last trading at 88.45. A break here would mean a sharp move to 90. Nairobi All-Share up 13.948%. NSE 20 ticked marginally lower yesterday, but it's closed above 5,000 every day since 5th August. It's plus 2.325% this year. BAT, which is plus 22.16%, closed at a record high yesterday. Crown Paints plus 41.333% this year, closed at a record high as well. Once again, thank you for stopping by.